Our main trip was really to the Republic of Ireland, but we were coming from the Highlands in Scotland, so it made the most sense to fly into Belfast first. So we spent 24 hours in Northern Ireland, and I am very glad we did for one very specific reason. So we landed in Belfast, grabbed our rental car, and immediately drove the Causeway coast, with our first stop being Carrick-a-Rede rope bridge, which was originally used by salmon fishermen and hangs really high above the sea between these cliffs on this tiny, breathtaking island. Walking along this bridge can definitely feel intimidating, but I promise you it is worth it. And then there was Giant's Causeway. I have never in my life seen anything like this place. There are over 40,000 of these strange hexagonal basalt columns that rise out of the coastline like something ancient and otherworldly. The geological explanation is that they were formed by volcanic activity, but because it is so out of this world looking, it still feels like the myth makes just as much sense. So legend says that this giant named Finn McCool was challenged to a fight by this Scottish giant named Aghnanure. So Finn McCool built a path across the sea to Scotland so the two giants could meet. The whole landscape feels so mythic that it makes one kind of believe the legend. Before we left Belfast, we stopped by the Peace Wall, and I think it's important to name what that represents. After Ireland won its independence from British rule in 1921, Northern Ireland remained part of the UK, and Belfast later became one of the main centers of what was called the Troubles. The Troubles was a violent conflict tied to British rule, Irish identity, nationalism, unionism, religious and civil rights. These walls were built to separate Catholic and Protestant neighborhoods. The walls still remain, but they have turned into peace walls now that thankfully the conflict is over. People come from all over the world to sign their names on this wall. We were only in Northern Ireland for 24 hours before heading to the Republic of Ireland, but it was so worth it. After crossing into the Republic of Ireland, we headed west towards Connemara. Our destination was the tiny village of Leenane, and if you're planning a trip to Western Ireland, don't make the same mistake we did. Book more than one night at the historic Leenane Hotel. Leenane is a small traditional Irish village tucked between these dramatic mountains and the Killary Harbour, which is one of Ireland's few glacial fjords. This was exactly the Ireland I'd been hoping to experience. I cannot speak highly enough of the historic Leenane Hotel, which has been welcoming travelers since the late 1700s. Our room overlooked the arbor, and the restaurant served one of the best meals we had in Ireland. As the evening settled in, the hotel came completely alive. Locals began gathering in the hotel's beautiful main hall sitting area. Local musicians started playing live music. Locals were singing, dancing, and simply enjoying each other's company. We got to talk with people from the village, and it felt like we had stumbled into a real Irish community getting to spend an evening together. The hotel is only about 10 minutes from Connemara National Park, making it a perfect base. The next morning, we headed to the Lower Diamond Hill Trail, which is considered one of the best short hikes in Ireland. Next, we headed to the Kylemore Abbey, which is only a few minutes away and is one of Ireland's most photographed landmarks. It was built in the 1800s by Mitchell Henry as a love letter to his wife Margaret. Today the estate is home to Benedict nuns. There are walking paths, stunning Victorian walled gardens, and the adorable Connemara Ponies, which are a native Irish breed that's been roaming this landscape for centuries. While most people come to the Abbey for the castles and gardens, one of my favorite discoveries was the Giant's ironing stone. Irish tradition says to stand with your back against the stone, make a wish, and toss a pebble over your shoulder 3 times. There's just one rule: don't wish for money. Before making our way to Galway, we stopped at the Aghnanure Castle, a beautifully preserved 16th century Gaelic Tower House, once home to the powerful O'Flaherty clan. During the 1500s, King Henry VIII wanted to bring all of Ireland under English rule, so he introduced a policy called surrender and regrant, where Gaelic chiefs were expected to surrender their lands to the crown, swear loyalty to him, and then receive them back, but under English law. The O'Flaherty clan became caught between the crown and preserving their Gaelic way of life, ultimately dividing the clan, marking the decline of Gaelic independence. You can actually climb inside the tower, exploring the same halls people did over 500 years ago. If you're planning a road trip through Ireland, I can't recommend this route enough. Next, we're exploring Galway. Galway was one of the places I was most excited to visit because I'm about 95% sure this is where part of my family bloodline comes from. Before the trip, I'd spent a lot of time digging through old records and trying to trace one of my ancestors, Darby Patrick McDonough, who immigrated from Ireland during the famine. Now, not every day of travel is picture perfect, though. Galway ended up being one of the harder days of our trip for me personally. I was traveling with a group and there was some tension that became difficult for me, so I found myself wandering the street on my own quite a bit. Looking back, I'm actually really grateful for that. It gave me the freedom to experience Galway at my own pace. I spent time journaling in quiet little corners, struck up conversations with some of the locals, and even found a peaceful moment of reflection inside the Galway Cathedral, which was nearly empty when I visited. Being on my own also led me to some wonderful, whimsical experiences. I stumbled into the most charming little secondhand shop where I found little treasures that had once belonged to Irish families, little pieces of history that I was able to bring home with me. It was such a special experience that I ended up making an entire other video about what I got at this shop, which I will link here. I wandered through Eyre Square, explored the colorful streets of the Latin Quarter, stopped by the Spanish Arch and the Galway City Museum. I also found my new favorite musician. Galway is overflowing with incredible street musicians. I stumbled across a singer in the square named Sail Him, and I ended up sitting there for nearly 2 hours, completely captivated by his voice. Galway felt so alive, colorful buildings, music echoing through the streets, little shops tucked around every corner, really friendly locals who made me feel very welcome. It had an energy that's really hard to explain until you're actually there. I may not have found all the answers I was looking for about my family's history, but I left feeling connected to Galway in a way I wasn't expecting. Sometimes a place leaves its mark on you, even if the reason you came there changes along the way. Everyone told me I had to go to the Guinness Storehouse in Dublin, but I'm sober, so I decided to spend 48 hours on my own exploring a completely different side of the city. And I'm so glad I did. My first stop was the Little Museum of Dublin, and if you only have time for one museum while you're here, make this the one. It's one of the most charming, story-driven museums in Ireland, completely beloved by locals. Instead of feeling like you're walking through exhibits, you are guided through by world-class Irish storytellers. This is a book-ahead experience that I highly recommend to everyone visiting Dublin. The next morning, I booked the very first entry into the Book of Kells experience. This is another book ahead experience. Don't expect to just show up. The Book of Kells is a 9th century illuminated gospel manuscript blending Christian stories with a Celtic imagination. It was created and protected by Columbian monks and is one of the most treasured cultural artifacts in Ireland. Laying eyes on this book definitely gave me chills. From there, I popped into Marsh's Library, which is another great spot if you love old books as much as I do. My next stop was St. Patrick's Cathedral, where I had the most whimsical experience. I had just finished reading The Other Boleyn Girls, so visiting St. Patrick's Cathedral, which is an Anglican church, felt especially meaningful. Instead of just walking through the cathedral, I arrived in time to attend a service. Sitting in a building with soaring Gothic architecture where people have worshipped for over 800 years was very special. Afterward, members of the congregation and local Irish welcomed me. One of the clergy spent time showing me around after, which was so special. I will remember that experience forever. For our last night before heading back to the States, I booked tickets at the Abbey Theatre, which is Ireland's national theatre founded in 1904. I saw My Fierce Ignorant Step, which captivated me to no end. It was such a unique Irish experience on the power of connection and the joy of being alive. I just loved it. Dublin reminded me that some of the best travel memories aren't always the most famous attractions. I'm so glad I skipped the Guinness Storehouse and found these gems instead. Ireland completely exceeded my expectations, and I hope this helps you plan an unforgettable trip of your own. If Ireland is on your bucket list, save this video for when you're planning your itinerary. And if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'm happy to help.